Hello, everybody. It is your old buddy John here, and I wanted to do this podcast because a lot of stuff's going down in the White House and in the quarters of power in Washington, outside of the White House, like Congress and whatnot, and there have been some interesting developments as of late. Especially when you consider the fact that on the DACA issue, the Dreamers Act, Trump is actually working with Democrats now, apparently. And it's an interesting scenario because all of a sudden, he's wanting to make a deal with the Democrats because he can't deal with his own party, it seems like, on this issue. And it very well could mean that he's going to be dealing with the Democrats and some Republicans from now on. Now, does this mean Donald Trump is changing into a Democrat? Doubtful. But he could decide, because this is a very unorthodox presidency we're talking about here, that he's no longer a member of the Republican Party and may decide to go full independent. Now, if you remember during the campaign, in the primary season, Donald Trump, more than one occasion, threatened to go third party if the Republicans didn't give him the support he desired. Of course, we know what happened. The Republicans jumped on the Trump train, and surprise, surprise, he actually won the election, much to everybody's shock and to some chagrin. Now we're finding out that, this may not be the kind of paradise that the Republicans thought it would be, having both the White House and the Congress. And it's kind of bizarre because I've never seen so many Republicans come out publicly against the president. Paul Ryan criticized Donald Trump's stance on the DACA, Dreamers Act. And now all of a sudden Trump is changing his tune. The wall is all of a sudden no longer a big issue for Donald Trump. Here's what I think is going to happen. You're going to get essentially the Obama DACA Act almost as is, with a few little tweaks to kind of get rid of some people that may be charged with a crime or may possibly be really guilty of a crime. We don't know, but there'll be some change. It'll somewhat mollify the not so hardcore supporters of Donald Trump. The hardcore supporters, though, could see this as an ultimate betrayal. And that's the problem for Donald Trump, because here's a man who said he was not going to give in, he was going to be different, he was going to be drain swamp. And what does he go out to do? He basically decides he wants to be just like everybody else was. Now, that being said, Donald Trump is a smart guy. He isn't the idiot that some people think he is. But his ego gets him in trouble. And that's part of the reason which shocked me about the fact he's working with Democrats. Because could this very well be that Donald has realized that he needs to check his ego at the door? Probably not. I think he reined it in on this occasion. This is politics. And politics sometimes means you have to change your mind. You have to compromise. You have to be willing to admit that what you're proposing probably will not work, and you have to find a way to get something of what you want while giving the other side some of what they want. It's called compromise, people. It was a big thing for a long time. And then about, a little less than 40 years ago, the Republicans decided that why compromise when we can basically be the party of opposition when we're not in power and be the party of this is where we're going, and if you don't like it, tough, But here's what I think is going to happen. Donald Trump's seen the polls. And I think he's finally starting to see through General Kelly the real picture. People don't really like him. People on his own side don't like him too much. Outside of his hardcore supporters, he's a very unpopular president. Even among Republicans, he's not that popular. He should be getting 70%, 80% of Republicans. It's barely above 50. In some cases, it's even below 50, depending on what demographic or Republican you're talking about. The youth vote does not want to have anything to do with him. The minorities don't. So his basic group are white Protestant males is his group, primarily. That's why he's reluctant to go after white supremacists, because he sees them as a political base. Now, if that is the case, he's an idiot. Indeed, he's an idiot, because A, white supremacists are not exactly huge. They make a lot of noise, but their numbers are not that big. Social media wise, they can make a lot of thunder and lightning happen online. But the reality is, compared to other political groups, they're small potatoes. But Donald Trump sees this as a way to kind of keep his base, because he feels like, hey, I'm a fighter. The reality is, politics is not necessarily about fighting all the time. It's about making deals, getting things done. And Donald Trump may very well realize, guess what? He's got to get stuff done. And he's got a lot of stuff he's got to do. He's got to pass a budget. He's got to pass a debt ceiling raising. He's got to pass DACA. He's got to pass tax reform, which will probably not be as much as he'd like it to be. It may be a lot less than he likes it to be. I'm thinking he's wanting to change it from 35% to 15% for corporate tax rate. I think he's going to be lucky if he gets it anywhere near the lower 20s. But he has to close the loopholes. If he closes these loopholes and finds a way to mollify Democrats and shows that we can get the revenue, and that this is not just a simple a tax break for the rich, and actually shows that this is going to provide jobs and bring in tax revenue, then he's got something. But the problem with his way of thinking is the last 40 years almost, wherever we cut the highest tax rates for corporations, jobs don't always follow. And when they do, sometimes they don't always last. And when they do, sometimes they're not high-paying jobs to replace the ones that were lost when free trade became a thing. Now, we hear sometimes that some Donald Trump supporters talk about that they're fighting globalization, that they don't like globalists. Well, I'm not a big fan of globalization, but I'm a realist, and I know it's coming. It's pretty much, we've opened the Pandora's box. We can only deal with the reality that we are living in a globalized society. The race has already been run. Globalization won. You got to adapt to it. Donald Trump doesn't want you to believe that. He talks about America first. That's all well and good, but the fact of the matter is we are the leaders of the free world. We have a responsibility there. We have a responsibility as leaders in North America and in the Americas. And we have to deal with the fact that we deal with two big trade opponents in China and the European market, or I should say European Union. We deal with Russia, which is still a potent economy, even though it's kind of depends on who you talk to and what stats you look at. It's not the strongest economy, but it's still got plenty of punch. Speaking of Russia, here's my take on the latest news. I think Donald Trump is trying to make good with Democrats because he realizes his ass is in trouble. And I don't get any joy out of this. Somebody said, do you not wish Donald Trump to succeed? And I'm going, well, it's not a matter of wishing. It's a matter of I've seen his plan and I don't think he can succeed with that plan. So therefore, while I wish him luck, how can I wish him success when his plan, in my opinion, does not breed success? And his way of dealing in the government so far, it goes against everything we've pretty much been brought up. You don't bring in your relatives to be part of the administration. Billy Carter was Jimmy Carter's brother and had Billy Beer, but he was not an active role in the government. There was a difference with Hillary Clinton. She was the first lady and she had qualifications. She also had a lot of baggage. Now, about Hillary Clinton's book. First of all, let me go ahead and state something that some of you people who don't like the fact I bash Donald Trump don't realize. I'm not a big fan of Hillary Clinton either. Okay? I have never seen a presidential election where the two choices we had in the major parties were so unpopular. It makes 2000 seem like, an absolute abundance of great choices. I've never seen two candidates so reviled by their own parties, much less the opposition parties. So just because I heavily criticize Donald Trump does not mean I think Hillary Clinton is God's gift to women and men. No. I think that had she won the election, would have done okay, but there would be scandals. Benghazi would not go away. The email scandal would not go away. And as time goes on, ladies and gentlemen, and I've said this before, history is going to show that Hillary Clinton probably should have won this election. That Russian interference did have a factor to play in this election. Did it mean that she lost the election solely because of that? No. I think there were some shenanigans going on. I think that there was stuff going on with the Republican Party to try and keep her out of office. Basically, keeping people from voting by making it as difficult as possible to vote in some cases. I'm one of those people who believe that early voting should take place 3 weeks before the election every single day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you can make it, and as we get closer to the election, more and more early voting stops should open up. I believe you should be able to mail in your ballot. And I firmly believe, I'm all for prosecuting voter fraud, but the reality is voter fraud is so few and far between and so very rare that unless you're in a very small community in a rural area, it doesn't really make a statistical difference. Okay? You're talking about 120 million votes were cast last year for the presidency. How many reports of voter fraud? Maybe a few. Maybe a couple of dozen, perhaps maybe a little bit more than that. In order to influence the election, you would need at least several thousand in the right precincts to affect the election. And here's the thing. She won the popular vote, he won the electoral vote. Doesn't matter the popular vote, he won the election. But because he lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes, he's complaining about voter fraud. This is not serious. This is simply trying to make Hillary Clinton look bad. Okay? To me, attacking Hillary Clinton after you've won the election is stupid. Okay? It makes you look bad. It makes you look like a sore winner. It makes me wonder if he really thinks he actually won the election. And that is where I think there is something to all of this. Because if you were confident in your victory, why would you care what Hillary Clinton said? Go off, be busy being president. It seems like any time anybody criticizes Donald Trump, either himself or his minions go crazy. And they do it in a way that makes me wonder sometimes if he's got something very serious to hide. If you're someone that doesn't have anything to hide, why worry about stuff like this? The key here is, and I've said this many times before, don't worry about if there's nothing to any of this. Don't worry about them looking into it because you have nothing to hide. Let them do their investigation and all this. He wants to block this investigation at every turn. He wants to bring back the Benghazi and email investigations which have already been done. They found next to nothing serious. Benghazi, practically nothing, except the Republicans did cut embassy security funding. There was that. Now, did Hillary Clinton screw up with Benghazi? Yes, I think she didn't respond as fast as she could have. I don't think she was doing it out of maliciousness. I don't think she was doing it out of incompetence. I think that this was a situation that caught her flat-footed. They didn't see it coming. And it blew up in her face. So there is that. Now, when I think about the future of this country, I think that Donald Trump's vision of it is far, far wrong. I think he doesn't realize that the people that are his biggest supporters are about to become a minority group. White men are about to become a minority group if they've not already become a minority group. Oh, and by the way, I'm white and I'm male. And I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. I've said before on this podcast and another podcast in the past that actually at one point I actually considered Donald Trump to be someone that might not be a bad president at all. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s when he did a few interviews. And I don't think he really seriously considered ever running. Because, hey, he was having a great time doing what he's doing. My feeling about Donald Trump is he got himself into this position and he doesn't know how to be president. Okay? That's the thing. He is looking around going, what the hell have I gotten myself into? That's pure and simple my gut feeling. I believe he doesn't realize what he has gotten himself into. It's not fun. Okay? People hate him. Even people of his own party hate him. Now, can he turn the ship around? I think the key here is getting rid of a lot of deadwood. I think Omarosa's got to go. He's gotten rid of a lot of deadwood to begin with. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders needs to go. You need somebody who can deal with the media in a respectful manner. Okay? Who can be firm about policy, but do it in a way that makes Donald Trump look good. Sarah Huckabee Sanders looks like an idiot. She looks combative. She looks like someone who is, frankly, glad that she can stand up there and lie. Okay? Which, I hate to say it, a lot of what she's saying is lies. Fed to her through Donald Trump. Now, his newest communication director, Hope Hicks, I think her name is. I'm not expecting a whole lot because she's a longtime Trump associate who doesn't have any real political experience. She has some in the corporate realm of things, but there's a difference between corporate PR and political PR, okay? So my feeling is this. Donald Trump needs to get some people who have political savvy in them, in communications, in strategy, and in dealing with Congress. Now, it's a good sign that he's working with Democrats. But he has to show that he's willing to work with the Republicans. And he has to be willing to stand up and say to Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, look, we got to get stuff done. If it means I got to work with Democrats to get it done, I'm going to work for Democrats to get it done. You can either come along for the ride or sit, and I'll find enough Republicans to get what I want. You see, Donald Trump made the classic mistake every single president makes. Almost every single one of them does. And probably everyone has done this mistake. Thinking that they can get Congress to simply do exactly what they want. Congress is not the subservient of the President of the United States. Okay? It is a check and balance to the presidency. Okay? It's 1/3 of the federal government. It is an equal branch of the federal government with the presidency. Okay? So, in all of this, ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you that the presidency is just still very young. We've not gotten to the 1-year mark yet. Got a few more weeks to go before that happens, a few more months actually. So how does Donald Trump right the ship? It ain't going to be easy. First of all, he has to show he can get results. Second of all, he has to be willing to have the courage to get rid of his really hardcore base. The ones that will never give up for him. Because, frankly, what other choice do they have? Who are they going to go with? The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, is that Donald Trump is in a position to make the greatest political comeback in the history of American politics. All he has to do is be willing to do something that most politicians don't know how to do these days. Compromise. Compromise, make deals with the other party, and get stuff done. The main reason we don't see it is because a lot of Republican benefactors, the Koch brothers, the Sheldon Adelsons, and a bunch of others, they like seeing divided gridlock government because it means they can get away with stuff. And they can make the Democrats look like the bad guys because they want to make the Democrats look like the bad guys, because if it means if Republicans win, they can push through their agenda, which is basically that government should not have anything to do with what corporations do, and corporations can run roughshod over people. Okay? So yeah, Donald Trump is a bit of a thorn in that side because his hardcore supporters want government to stay out of their lives, but they want government to be strong to protect them from attack from, say, North Korea or China or Russia or somebody else. And also be strong enough to bring back jobs. Okay? Well, that's all well and good. Only one problem. How do you bring back jobs that are pretty much gone? The main reason these jobs are lost is not necessarily international competition. It's a little thing called automation. So yeah, how can Donald Trump bring jobs back that have been lost to automation? Look at Walmart. They're taking out registers with cashiers and putting in self-checkouts. I was in there today. Used to be they had 4 self-checkouts on each side. Now they've got probably a dozen on each side, maybe 8 to 10 on each side. I didn't count. They're finding ways to where they don't have to have cashiers unless absolutely needed. Okay? They're getting rid of people that they don't need, in their opinion. I disagree with it. You need people on the sales floor to help customers, to put out freight. What Donald Trump is wanting to do is to run government as very bare bones as possible, of course, with the exception of the military. And even then, they're running bare bones because a lot of their spending is pork. You want Donald Trump to become a popular president? Donald Trump needs to go into the Defense Department and go, okay, you guys are getting audited. Even the top secret, highly classified stuff is getting audited. If he can start cutting out a lot of that waste, why is it that we spend the most in our military, 3 times that of Russia and twice that of China? No, 3 times that of China and twice that of China and Russia combined. And yet, we always hear about their shortages of parts. They have problems getting parts. They have problems getting equipment. They have red tape through the yin-yang. Ladies and gentlemen, why does that happen? If we're spending nearly 2/3 of $1 trillion, if not 3/4 of $1 trillion, on our national defense every single year, what are we paying for? What are we paying for? That is what I'd like to know. So in the end conclusion, Donald Trump's biggest problem right now is the unpredictability, which has always been his problem. You don't know which way he's going to go. And it may seem like it's a great thing in business, but in politics and public policy, that's not a good thing. People like consistency. People like to know where their president stands. They may disagree with him, but they at least want to know where he stands. Donald Trump is starting to flip-flop. Now he's flopping on issues, which I think he's starting to come around to that. Hey, maybe we don't really need a wall right now, which is his way of going, okay, we can't afford a wall. I'm not going to take the heat for it. And I can say, well, they won't pay for the wall. Mexico won't pay for the wall. The federal government won't fund it, so it's not my fault. Donald Trump is learning politics on the job. And what he's going to try to do is to convince you that it's not his fault that precious wall is not getting built. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? To find out the wall that you wanted isn't going to get built. I think it's a great idea that he's not going to build it, because I think that building a wall is bad symbolically and bad economic policy. You're wasting money on a wall that could be spent on roads and bridges and whatnot. And if you noticed, your produce prices have started to creep up. That's because a lot of those migrant workers who aren't here legally in many cases aren't coming out to work. They're scared. And farmers are having a difficult time finding people that will work on the farm. So, you want to be free of illegal immigrants, but you don't want to do the jobs that illegal immigrants do. Okay, now we're coming up on a key few months here. First of all, pretty much economically, Donald Trump's policies have not really taken effect yet. We're still living in the Obama era in the economic sense. Jobs are good, but a lot of those policies have come from Obama. Donald Trump's policies have not really taken hold yet. So this time next year, when they have, it'll be interesting to see where this nation is, especially what happens the next few weeks. The debt ceiling deal. What kind of deal do we get? Do we get spending cuts on the budget? Do we get a watered down tax reform, watered down tax cuts? The biggest problem is, and this is something that everybody needs to know about, isn't how high taxes are, it's how much revenue is coming in and how much we're spending. Okay? Because it's interesting to find out just how much revenue we really need to run the government, but we're not willing to cut anything. Not realistically, we're not willing to cut anything. And that's a big problem, ladies and gentlemen. That is a very big problem. So what does Trump have to do to become somewhat popular? First of all, he's pretty much got to denounce white supremacy and all this violence, and he cannot go, well, Antifa's bad too, Black Lives Matter is bad too. No. He's got to say fundamentally, without hesitation or reservation, that the Klan, that these other white supremacist groups are verboten. He's got to break away from the Alex Joneses in the world, the Steve Bannons and Breitbarts of the world, the Newsmaxes, the Daily Callers. He has to be willing to sit down with Anderson Cooper from CNN, for the guy Anthony Mason from CBS. I don't know if they've named him the permanent anchor of the CBS Evening News or not yet. Lester Holt from NBC, David Muir from ABC, whoever they got at Fox. Of course, they'll sit down for him because he's their guy. But I'd love to see him face off against Rachel Maddow. The problem is, he doesn't understand verbal tete-a-tete. The linguistic fencing one does with reporters if you're a politician. He's too blunt. He doesn't have the verbal skills. The gift of gab that politicians generally do. He's a straightforward, in a sense, kind of guy. He doesn't like talking in nuances or subtleties or whatnot. And that's the thing. So there we go. Well, folks, thank you so very much for tuning in. Normally we would be doing more than one topic. I'm not feeling too hot right now. I'm not sick. I'm just really tired. And had a little bit of stress lately in my life and not feeling the 100%. So I'm going to just stick with this. Future shows will probably be along the lines of multiple topics. A news topic, a sports topic, a pop culture, a geek culture topic. I will tell you that apparently Star Trek Discovery is not going to be submitted for reviews by CBS, reviews from critics by CBS, which means you're not going to get a write-up in your local paper until after the show is actually debuted. And that's not necessarily a good sign. Not entirely a bad sign either, but if you're proud of what you're putting out there, generally you would like critics to give you that buzz. And if you're not happy with it, and you still got to put it out there anyway, you generally want to kind of water down the criticism. It's a little game Hollywood likes to play now, which is sort of like, we know we're going to get killed. And here, let me go off on a tangent here. All right? Let's do a multiple topic anyway. This has been one of the worst box office summers for the movie industry. The movie industry likes to blame sites like Rotten Tomatoes for the bad reviews. Okay? Here is the problem. Okay? The movies suck. The movies suck. Pure and simple. Not all of them. There are probably quite a few good ones. Wonder Woman was a good movie. But there were a lot of action movies that fell flat. And that's the problem with Hollywood. They're rebooting everything. They're rebooting stuff that really doesn't need to be rebooted. Did we really need a Baywatch rebooted movie? No. The stuff they really should reboot, that actually might be pretty good, they're not wanting to reboot. Blake 7 would be an excellent candidate to be rebooted. Babylon 5. There's a lot of details about why that won't happen. I won't go into that right now. WKRP in Cincinnati. Soap from back in the 70s. There's so many reboot possibilities. And yet nobody's willing to, actually take the time to go through why some reboots work and some don't. When we have these sequels, there's going to come a point when the Marvel and DC universes realize, you know what? It ain't happening anymore. And I'm thinking there's going to become a point where, yeah, all these Marvel movies are great. The Avengers, the blah, 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 Guardians of the Galaxy, this, that, and the other. There's going to come a point where we realize, yeah, we've had too much. Star Wars has to be careful right now. They're running a pretty good pace. They're doing films every 2 years. Episode 7 was 2 years ago. Now this year we've got episode 8. A couple more years we'll get episode 9. Last year was Rogue One. The next year will be the Han Solo movie, if it ever gets released. If I'm the people in charge of Disney when it comes to Star Wars, I'm very careful. You always want to leave the audience wanting more. Don't make the mistake Star Trek has made, where you've had so much out there that people get tired of it. Do you want to know why Voyager tended to not be as successful as Next Generation and Deep Space Nine? Why Enterprise was canceled short of the 7-year goal? There was too much of it. There was a glut of it. And the glut and the stuff that was out there, a lot of Enterprise stuff, frankly, was not that good. There was a lot of stuff from Voyager, which kind of fell flat with me. You want to leave your audience looking for something more. It's like with Battlestar Galactica. 4 great seasons. Caprica had potential, but it wasn't exactly the same thing. It wasn't meant to be the same thing. People didn't want to have it. So there is that. Now, as for the movies, originality is needed in Hollywood. They need to take risk, okay? They need to take risk. Big time. They're desperate to take some risk. So, there is that. All right, sports-wise, what do I... LA is getting the 2028 Olympics. The first American Olympics in 32 years will come to the United States again. LA will get their first Olympics in 44 years. The last time was 1984. I remember that fondly. I will be 57 when those games happen. 2 years into my AARP career. I do hope to be around for that. I fully expect to be. Will they run a huge debt? Probably not. The LA Games of 84 actually turned a profit, a nice sizable profit. I think, here's the crazy thing. The 2 last American-hosted Olympic Games in the summertime, LA 84, Atlanta 96, turned profits. Why? A lot of commercialization. A lot of private spending. Okay? LA is going to make out like a lot of bandits because they're going to get some public money to deal with their transport system. They're going to get a lot of money to deal with the fact that they need better roads and such, and a better maybe light rail, maybe more. LA actually does have a subway, which is kind of weird in earthquake country, but they do have a subway system. And of course, LAX could use the help with, considering they're one of the busiest airports in the world. Any help would be a benefit for them. A lot of the facilities are already built. Some of them will be around for years. I mean, the Coliseum will see its 3rd Olympic Games. Pauley Pavilion, its second Olympic Games. They've torn down the LA Sports Arena, but hey, the Staples Center is there. Let's see its first. The new LA Rams Stadium will be there. The Home Depot Center, whatever they call it now. I think they still call it Home Depot Center in Carson, California. We'll see plenty of action. There'll be plenty of stuff. And, of course, the local colleges like UCLA, USC will make out like bandits. They'll get some refurbishments. The Olympic Village will be probably a future site of condominiums and trendy little areas, I don't know about affordable housing because that's generally, in LA, this is the Olympic Village is going to be a prestige place. They're going to turn this into fancy condominiums. You're not going to see what is happening in Rio or what happened in other Olympic cities. You're not going to see the neglect. Because America loves their sports. America loves their college sports. So a lot of these facilities are going to be well kept up after the Olympic Games. In fact, some of the facilities built for 84 will be used for this. So, yeah. And I think the only thing Atlanta really doesn't use that much of from their Olympics is the velodrome. Everything else pretty much they use. Other temporary facilities will be utilized. I think they'll probably build a temporary facility for beach volleyball. It'll actually be on the beach. So, yeah. That'll be interesting. Paris will host it in 2024. That'll be interesting. They'll probably have a bunch of their own venues. That'll be there won't be any. The next three Summer Olympics will have. These facilities will be utilized a lot. Japan loves their sports. The French love their sports. Baseball's coming back in 2020, which means Tokyo is a big baseball. Paris, not so much, but they can always change it. Here's the thing. You can always change it to an amphitheater. A baseball stadium in an amphitheater. Build it into the design. Oh, by the way, as for Atlanta's Centennial Olympic Stadium, the one that was known as Turner Field, they've actually done a nice job of converting it to Georgia State football. I'm interested to see how that actually comes around to be, because it could be a very big boom for Georgia State. Potentially could boost that program to where they might get into a bigger conference down the road. I don't think they'll challenge, say, Georgia Tech anytime soon, but you never know. They might get to the point where they could be the third largest team in Georgia, sharing Atlanta with Georgia Tech, who ain't exactly been wowing people in either football or basketball for a while. They have their football teams occasionally do kind of challenge a little bit, but not much. So, anyhow. What else? I don't really think there is anything out there right now. Geek culture-wise, we already covered Star Trek Discovery. Pop culture-wise, not really much out there. That I really want to. Oh, Lady Gaga has fibromyalgia, which would explain some of her health issues in the past. It ain't fun. I've known some people who've had that. It's not fun. I would not be surprised if Lady Gaga uses this as an opportunity to kind of start changing her career around to where she's playing smaller venues and goes to more of a scaled back performance where it's basically her singing, where she's got a beautiful voice. She can actually play a lot of these instruments. And she may decide, instead of having this big, fancy show, scale it back to where it's just her and a piano. I could see that happening. And she's gotten to that point where she can take that creative risk. So, oh, man. So, I know Katy Perry's about to start off her tour. I think Taylor Swift's probably doing a tour right now or about to start one. I don't follow the music scene all that much anymore. I know that, really, to be honest with you, a lot of pop music is, aside from Adele and a few others, it's kind of bland. Very predictable, very, not really... I'm not exactly jumping for joy that, I miss the 80s when you had a lot of great pop acts, you had a lot of great rock acts, you had some good metal. It was hair metal, admittedly, but it was still pretty good. So, anyhow, let me tell you some of the things I'm thinking about for a future podcast. I know you're probably familiar with CNN's Decades series, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't know if they're going to do the aughts or the naughties or whatever, the double zeros, whatever you want to call them. I might very well try and kind of do a review of those somewhere down the road. I don't know when that'll exactly be, but I'll let you know when that might happen. I like the idea of potentially doing those again, but sorry, I had a little gas exchange there. Anyhow, I need to do some reviews. I've been watching the HBO series Rome. It was only on for 2 seasons. In many ways, if you like Game of Thrones, you will appreciate and maybe even like Rome. It's a decade old. The only reason they canceled it was, simply put, it was very expensive to film in Italy. A great cast. The first season is great. The second season was really good at times, but as they got closer to the end, when they realized they were going to have to cancel the series, they kind of rushed things a bit, and it kind of, The whole Cleopatra, Mark Antony thing could have been played out for a full season. It could have been an epic. So, anyhow, let me also give you a recommendation for a series that only lasted a season, actually only lasted 13 episodes. But I think it's actually pretty good, and really, it's one of those things, if Hollywood wanted to reboot it with the right cast, you could put this on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, and if you put the investment in it, you could kick ass with this. And that's Kings. It's like Rome, a decade old. It was on NBC, never really got a chance. I kind of dismissed it. It's the idea of a modern-day monarchy. Basically, it's the Kingdom of Jabbar. It's the story of, I think, King David and King Silas from the Bible. Goes to show how much of a biblical scholar I am. But anyhow, it's an interesting tale of 13 episodes that really leaves you hanging. And it's one of those series that they ever reboot, and they do it and they follow the way they originally planned, it would be epic. So yeah, I've said before, we only got 1 season of Firefly, but yet we've had so many seasons of Kardashians, it's not even funny. Where's the justice in that? God's got a lot to answer for. That's one of them. Oh boy. Yeah, when I kick the bucket, God's going, oh jeez, can Pete, let me know when he comes through, so that when he does come through, I could be like on the other side of heaven. I'll get to you, John. And maybe a few thousand years down the road, he'll finally go, okay, I guess I got to bite the bullet. And then the lecture comes. All right, God, I get finally time to tell you what you're accountable for. Here we go. Number 1. Are you comfortable, God? Do you need a cold beverage? Because you're going to need it. You're going to need a few. You might want to get that cooler. You're going to need it. Oh, boy. It's an old joke. Oh, man. Anyhow, before I condemn my soul for sacrilege, I need to really talk about religion one of these days. My viewpoint on it. We ain't going to do it right now. Let's just say that I do believe in God, but I'm not much of a fan of organized religion. And why I'm not a fan of organized religion will get you talking, okay? So in any event, we are coming up on 56 minutes into this show. I hope you've enjoyed it. Me running at the mouth again. So for everybody here at the John Thomas Hill Show, it's good night, good luck, and what was that line again? Oh, let the good news be yours.